Yeah.
out of college was as blood banker up at Lakes Region General Hospital, right?
A blood banker?
Right. So if you need a cross match, you need transfusion, right?
You are? Okay.
I would be the one cross matching your blood and matching up blood and then making sure you got the right blood, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd walk out at the end of the day and I would think to myself, like, if you messed up today, someone could die.
Yeah, it would be it.
Like they get the wrong unit and they have a transfusion reaction, somebody could die. It just put everything else in my life for the rest, every job I've ever had since then, put it all in perspective. Bad things could happen if I screwed up, but nobody is going to die.
That's true. I had that same feeling when I first went into the Air Force. I was 18. I just turned 18 and they put me in jet fuels. And so it was my job to like go out and drive a fuel truck onto the flight line and refuel an F-15 or a B-2 bomber or whatever it was that day. And we also did liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen production and like servicing. And they always told me, you only get one shot at this. So if you mess this up, we'll let your family know you did your best.
Oh, you were going to be the one to die.
Yeah.
That's even more.
Yeah. Lately I've, I don't know if you watch the news. I'm sure you do, where they did the Russian missile and it blew the tank off the fuel tank in Moscow. It was a drone that came in and it blew the whole geodesic dome right off of the tank. I used to go up there and run the tape down to see how much water is at the bottom of the tank. I couldn't imagine how scary something like that is. Anyway, yeah. So it's
like when I say like, okay, so if you mess up, nobody died.
Well, I changed my job. I went to
fixable.
Right? Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
You went to law school, right? You're a lawyer?
Yeah, my undergraduate degree is in medical technology.
Okay.
I was a lab tech up at Lakes Region General Hospital, my first job out of college.
My God. Yeah. I don't like blood.
I put myself through school as a phlebotomist.
Really?
So as I tell people, if necessary, I can draw blood.
Yeah, we do have something in common. You left home at 17. I left home at 17, and I signed up for the Air Force. And you went and did your life.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're in that situation. I agree with you. I know those guys at Luz's house was like, just say that, but say it, and now it can't, it can't be done.
No, it's true. Like I didn't even think of that as a scary time, right? Even at the time, I knew like I was going off to college and I would be able to earn enough money, part-time jobs to put myself through. Like it wasn't that remarkable, right? Like kids that in those days, like you turned 18, you either went in the military, off to college, or you went off and started your own life, right? Like it wasn't.
It makes me think about what if I did it a different way, because before I went into the Air Force, I was a hairdresser. I went through trade school in Connecticut, got my license my junior year, and I started working in a salon full time.
Wow.
Yeah. Most people, when I tell them that, they're like, what? You're bald though. Different times, different, years. So there's a little bit of that. Yeah. The 80s and 90s, they were a different place, at least for me.
I mean, literally, like I was meeting with some kids, young people the other day, 20-something, early 20s, right? And they were telling me, this one's living in an apartment with somebody else and they have a hard time making ends meet, even paying rent, never mind saving for anything. The other ones are living at home. If they weren't living at home, they'd have like a real problem. And
it's such a nightmare.
Yeah. It's like they said to me, did the American dream ever exist? I'm like, I lived it. Right?
Like me too.
Right.
I had 5 kids.
Yeah.
I had a great career.
Yeah.
I'm able to come here and live here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have that option.
Right.
4 out of 5 of my kids still live here.
Yeah. See, I mean, we're in a strange place here.
Yeah. My oldest is 28, still living at home. No fault of his own. He has a bachelor's from UNH. And so I say that just because, so many of the young people are feeling that. And I feel terrible because I'm out there all the time, also talking to them. And I like asking them, what do you want me to ask whoever's going to be on the show? And yours was, obviously they want to talk about that one issue a lot. I like doing this because I didn't grow up here in New Hampshire. I didn't live here. I retired here. So I've only lived in New Hampshire for 8 years. I came here because my brother got dropped off when he was 13 at my uncle's house in Dover. And so he grew up here much more than I did. And so when I retired, my dad passed already while I was in service. My mom's in Florida. I was not going to Florida. So I came here. And so my point of that is I don't really have the same background that most people asking you questions have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know who you are. I know kind of like your history a little bit just because, well, we both ran last time. So I was with you at a lot of events and I heard you a lot, I don't have that deep history and I don't have, I think it gives me an opportunity to ask questions that are outside the box. So yeah, anything before 2018, I don't really know about. Yeah, it gives me a different perspective, good or bad. So, okay, so she got her pictures. John's staying. Well, I'll give you the option. Where do we start? Do you have anything that you really like to talk about?
I mean, I really think that what we've just been talking about, how hard it is for people.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me. Everywhere I go, it's all I hear, right? From the young couple in Keene where they're both teachers and they're both working second jobs. They can just barely make ends meet. They have no plans that they could buy a house, right? And it's sort of like, what have we done here? The young couple that told me they want to have another child, but there's no way they can afford childcare for another child.
Right.
The doctor who's just heartbroken about these Medicaid increases that are really, they're costing so many granite staters their health insurance. 13,000 people have already lost health insurance. But in particular, he's talking to me about an elderly man who's living on a $1,400 a month Social Security check. He's on oxygen, and he's going to have to pay these premiums that Kelly Ayotte has put in place. He doesn't have the money. The doctor says he's going to lose his coverage, and he's going to die. He said people are going to die. It's that sort of thing that is so stunning to me, even between this race and the last one, how bad things are right now out there for everybody.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. 24 to 26, I mean, we know what changes were made. I mean, we've watched a lot of things just get completely dismantled, and it's hard because we watch these young families, or people that want to have a young family, not be able to do that. It's crazy because healthcare, I think it really starts with that. If you're not okay, you can't go work. You don't have the ways to pay taxes, contribute to your community. And the thought of charging people a premium, the most vulnerable people, the people that have the least, that's an insult to people. Honestly, I hope they don't have to feel it to correct that. I hope they can see it. They can see their neighbors. They can listen to the news. They can I hope that it's out there so people can say, this is what happens when you don't vote in people that care about you and your neighbors.
Yes. And you might know, I spent my entire career in healthcare. My first job out of college was in the lab at Lakes Region General Hospital as a lab tech. And I spent 2 decades working in hospitals and hospital administrations and whatnot. Then I went to law school and became a healthcare attorney, representing healthcare providers, always focused on access to care. And it's the reason I got into public service. It's really been the driving force for me from the beginning, is that everybody is entitled to healthcare as a basic human right. And we need to make sure that that is true in our country. And right now, it's becoming less true, actually less true, tangibly less true under this administration.
Oh, absolutely. People are struggling. I mean, people have medical debt now showing up on their credit report. We all know how that domino effects, whether you can get an apartment because they pull your credit report and all of that. It's awful. There was something there that you had said about your history that I'm kind of curious. How do you go and have a career in healthcare? What was the catalyst, if you will, that made you say, I need to go to law school? Why not just work your way up in the medical field? But what made you go to do that?
So I ran a hospital business office and was constantly battling insurance companies who didn't want to pay for health care. And then there was a time when the government was really clamping down on healthcare and what people were billing. And I learned a lot about how companies, providers needed to bill their services to be in compliance with the law. And it ended up that I was explaining to hospital and doctors' lawyers over and over and over again the same things. And I finally said, I should just go to law school and do this because I actually understand this at a level that these lawyers will never understand it. And that was true. I understood from a patient perspective, how all of these thousands and thousands of rules and regulations actually impact patient care and how they actually impact providers. So I went to law school actually to do that work.
That's huge. A lot of people just kind of just sail through and just look for retirement. But I mean, I just thought that going to law school itself is a significant bump in your purview, in your pay grade, if you will. But I think it's good because as a young person, maybe you deal with the medical field because you're starting a family and your child was born. But a lot of people, and I say this openly because everybody needs a doctor. But you don't start feeling that until later on in life so much, I don't know. It's different for everybody. For me, 40, and then all of a sudden I needed way more checkups. I needed way more attention, just the, general preventative health care, whether it's your gastro system or having a kid or, I don't know, having your arm cut off and sewed back up. So I'm glad that somebody knows healthcare because New Hampshire needs it.
Yes, it was a huge benefit to me as the executive counselor, too. We had nobody on the executive council that understands healthcare, and most of our budget in the state is healthcare related. And so being on the executive council and really getting to dig in into the details of how healthcare is being delivered in our state is huge benefit to me.
Yeah, no,
and to the state.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wonder, do you feel like New Hampshire is a medical desert? Maybe a hospital desert is more like it because it feels like we have a lot of clinics, but not a lot of like major hubs.
Well, we have 26 hospitals in the state. And my concern, quite honestly, is that a lot of them are endangered by what's going on, both with the cuts that Trump has put in, but also the cuts that Kelly has instituted, that we are endangering a very fragile healthcare system. A lot of places in rural areas, people do have to travel great distances to receive the care they need. And particularly when you talk about deserts, we have maternity deserts in this state because so many delivery programs have closed over the years that people have
Exeter,
to sometimes.
Right? Exeter just lost theirs, or they're trying to disband theirs.
I'm not sure of the current status of that, but yeah, I mean, we've lost so many of the programs across the state that people are having to travel really great distances to receive care. And that's, you talk about wanting to have young families stay here in our state and have their children and their grandchildren here. And healthcare is just such a key part of that. It's a key part of it for everybody, as you say. Maybe really young people don't think about it, but they will think about it.
Oh, yeah. They'll be forced to. All it takes is one accident, and then 9 months later, you're in the emergency room or delivery room, hopefully. When I think about hospitals and I think about kids wanting to stay in New Hampshire, there's so many things that are against them right now. And I'm not sure where doctor kind of sits on that list, but certainly housing and education, right? Because if you want to have a family here, their kids, my grandkids, they need a place to go to school. They need a place to get after school childcare, or, all those things that go into raising kids.
Exactly.
And I'm so scared. Not really, but I don't want my kids to leave, So I use scared as kind of a thing, but I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. I met with some young people just this week in their early 20s, and it's shocking to listen to what they feel about the future. I mean, they have really no expectation that they will ever own their own home. Most of them, all of them, have no way to do anything. They can just barely pay their rent.
Right.
Some of them are still living at home, even though, they're sort of past the age when you might expect, back in my day, that kids could have moved on.
Right, out you go.
Yeah, and that's just not the reality for kids in this state now. And, we really need to be focused if we want to, we're an aging state. Yeah. And I have to tell you, when I was on the executive council, and I would often listen to, Governor Sununu say, oh, we're an aging state. Like, just that's sort of the way it is. It's like, no, actually, we can do something about this. We can invest in higher education.
Yeah.
We can invest in childcare and housing, all of these things that we need to do to make sure that young people can stay here and raise their families here. And there was an example of a young couple that I met that they were buying their first home in their early 40s. And I learned that the average age to buy a first home is 40 now. And that's like all those years of equity building lost, right? Yeah. And they were so happy that and I was delighted for them that they finally were, had bought their first home. And then they told me that they cashed in his 401k to do it.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Right. It's terrible. Mortgaging their future for a mortgage.
Yeah.
And, we need to be focused on the things that it's everyone across the board. I mean, we have lost the middle class. We have put our seniors in a position where they're on a fixed income and they're having a harder and harder time making ends meet. Many seniors would like to downsize. There's no place for them to go.
Yeah.
It's really a difficult situation for working people and what used to be the middle class, which is now really the working poor.
Which is really scary. The more I drive around New Hampshire, the more and more houses I see up for sale, which you would think that's great because our inventory is at the lowest levels possible. But that's also because families keep growing and people, are pushing into New Hampshire looking for spots. But there has never been this many for sale signs on my street, at least in my community. So I don't know if people are just changing their mind and they're heading somewhere else or if they are downsizing. I'm not really sure, but I feel like New Hampshire has an opportunity here to be a really special state. If we could just shift those priorities to taking care of the people and less of the businesses. Yeah. But you're not against businesses either, I'm sure. No, we want everybody to win.
Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, right? And,
yeah.
And we need to make sure we want a vibrant business economy here in our state. We need to make sure that we're making this, as you say, a place where people can stay and raise their families. And New Hampshire is an amazing state, right? We all want to live here because it's just spectacular. It's so beautiful. And it is the place that, I have wanted to be, right? And where, where I want to make so that young families can stay here, be here, where our seniors can retire with dignity. This is a great state, and we just need to be focused and prioritizing the things that matter to the people.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking about businesses a little bit, I'm wondering, are business leaders talking to you about anything in particular? Is there something that they're really struggling with?
Housing and childcare.
Workforce.
And and workforce. And a lot of companies, they say they extend offers to people, and then the people don't end up coming because they can't find housing, even at the higher levels of professionals, but certainly and at entry-level jobs, that people can't find housing, so they can't be here. They can't work here. And the latest, I don't know if you saw, but Kelly Ayotte just vetoed the 10-year highway transportation plan, and businesses are very concerned about this, that we need to make sure that we are keeping our roads and our bridges in condition, both that are safe for all of us to drive on, but also encourage the kind of business development in our state that we want and need.
Yeah. When it comes to housing, do you have like a plan already ready to go, rolled out, that, you take office and it's go time? Yeah. What does that look like?
Well, you may not know this, but there's actually no one in state government who is accountable for knowing how many housing units we have, how many we need, and how we're going to get there. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to fund, definitely, the Housing Champions program. This is a program that was working. It was responsible for almost half of our housing starts in the last year, and it is the program that helps communities change their zoning ordinances in order to accommodate a higher density of housing. It also helps them build out that infrastructure with grants to do water and sewer. So many communities don't have that, and so they're not really able to accommodate that higher density of housing. So that program was working, was successful, and Kelly Ayotte defunded it. So we're going to fund that program. And then, really frustrating, the Affordable Housing Fund, for every dollar we invest in the Affordable Housing Fund, we can leverage that for $3 federal approximately. And we are just leaving millions and millions of dollars on the table every year because we won't invest that $1.
You could literally put that tagline, just put New Hampshire in that tagline. We leave so much on the table, and for no reason other than to prove a point that they can, I guess.
Another place is that when I was on the executive council, I discovered that the state of New Hampshire owns a lot of property that it has acquired over the years for various projects that didn't get built on. And once they own it, it's hard to get it back, right? So there were a number of times when I would work with the Department of Transportation and say, I need a piece of property for, this purpose. Or, for instance, there was a piece of property in Claremont that we were able to get back to the city that they could use to build housing. There was property up in Conway, North Conway, that's been going back to the community for housing. We need to do more of that. And we need to make sure that we are smoothing out the process and making sure that we are making it as easy as possible for people to build in our state. So there's a lot that needs to be done here. There's no silver bullet to this, but we have to actually take action, and we have to actually have a goal, a desire, and a priority on building affordable housing. We need housing at all levels, but in particular, we need affordable housing.
Oh, absolutely. Even here in Barrington, we were hoping for some affordable housing in the center, workforce housing, all that. And instead they built 500,000 townhouses, and that's useless for, our young people. If they can't afford a home, they certainly can't afford a $500,000 townhouse. And so I'm hoping that we do dial that in. And I had no idea that the state was taking back so much land and then giving it back to towns. That is an amazing opportunity to free up some land just for that.
Yes. We need to be going through our entire inventory of properties and identifying those that can be, returned at a reasonable rate, because the cost of land, of course, is a huge driver of the cost of housing. Not the only one by any means, but we need to do what we can to get that land back.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I would like your opinion on this, because one thing that we do here is tourism. We have really pretty trees. We have amazing landscapes to anywhere around the state, really, whether it's at the coast or up in the mountains, anywhere. I don't know if that tourism is ever coming back. And that's like 30%, I believe. Maybe that number, Canadian especially, right? And I'm not sure if the other states around us, how much it's affected them, but certainly coming across the border. And the Canadians used to come and spend a lot of money, not just here, but Maine, Vermont, and all the other states that touch the border. I'm wondering, have you thought much about like how do we make up in the future all of that revenue? Because I'm wondering how long it actually takes to have that bounce back.
Well, we need to repair our relationship with our neighbors to the north.
Yeah.
And I know that all of the New England states together should be working together and coordinating with our Canadian neighbors to repair some of the damage that's been done by the Trump administration. These tariffs have been very detrimental to the trade relations
Very much so.
with Canada and the whole, we're going to annex you and make you a 51st state, which
So
Trump promotes is just, Canadians don't really want that. And so we need to respect their sovereignty and really be working hard, but in a coordinated way with the other states in New England to reach out and make sure that we are doing everything we can to repair those relationships and develop new lines of communication with our neighbors, our very, very good neighbors to the north. And I have to tell you, I mean, yes, the number is about last I've heard, about 30% of the Canadian tourism we've lost. And we felt that when we were up at Motorcycle Week.
Oh, I bet.
Yes, there was a notable difference in the amount of traffic this year. In particular, the vendors noted the Canadian tourism being down. So
that's not sustainable over long periods of time. So I'm wondering if the state can develop even more revenue, up front, and hopefully not through tolls. Please don't toll me to death. But, we're a tourism state, and I'm just wondering, can we maybe shift some of our stuff into high tech jobs? If we can figure out how. I guess this is kind of a multi-pronged question because our minimum wage sucks. Everybody says, $15 an hour is fine to live on. Last time I checked, not here, not in New Hampshire. We have a very high cost of living, but we have a very low pay. And, with the tourism being dropped and everything else, I'm just wondering, 10 years down the road, where do we see ourselves as a state? You come in, hopefully reverse some of these policies, get us back on track a little bit. Is there anything that we can do to recover?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
We need an energy policy.
Oh, I like that.
Right?
Yes.
And we have a clean energy economy sitting right there waiting for us to take it. And we have an administration that is completely addicted to fossil fuels. We have dozens of solar projects around the state ready to go as soon as we get our foot off their throats. And there's a business right outside of Concord that it's a food distribution location. Energy is their second highest cost after labor because it's a refrigeration.
That's
right.
Gonna...
So they have 1 megawatt of solar on their roof. They need 5 in order to be basically off the grid. And the state holds them back from doing that. And this is a business that's making the business decision to do what they think is best for their business, and the state is holding them back. We just need to stop that.
I agree.
Facilitate this clean energy. There's lots of jobs in solar, in installation and in maintenance and in manufacturing. There's a lot of clean energy jobs that could come to this state, and we need to be taking advantage of that. And I would hope that that's the economy of the future that we are going to build for our state.
This state has so much available, whether it's thermal, whether it's solar. If we could just put a wind generator on top of Mount Washington, we'd probably power most of New England with those winds, but we have everything from tidal energy possibilities. I don't know how you feel about nuclear energy. A lot of people are a little scared because they think of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl and stuff like that. And, a meltdown would be horrible for us. But is that within your, are you willing to consider nuclear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially, small modular nuclear. I think we should be evaluating that for the future. But I'll tell you that it is the most expensive form of energy right now, and solar is the least expensive. And we continue in this state to proceed forward with a dependence on fossil fuels. It's just foolhardy, and it's really slowing us down. We need to be at the table talking about wind in the Gulf of Maine. It is, there's a huge wind source there, and our neighbors are having that conversation. We need to be at the table and having those discussions. But every, small modular nuclear is definitely something that we should evaluate.
Yeah, and I think you keep mentioning about working with everybody in New England, and I think that's really powerful. It was kind of embarrassing earlier this year or late last year when they said New Hampshire wouldn't engage in the coalition of healthcare, among the states. We were the only one that didn't get involved. How, if you become governor, how involved will you be with all the other governors in New England?
Yeah, where we can work together, we should be working together. Obviously, we're going to compete in some arenas, and that's healthy and good. But where we can and where it makes sense for us to be coordinating and working together, we should be doing that. And the reach out to Canada is a good example of that. The wind in the Gulf of Maine is a great example of that, right? So we need to be like taking advantage of the things that we can do better together.
Yeah.
And then competing where it's appropriate.
Absolutely. I think those are so important to bring our state together. I'm wondering, do you see in your campaign resistance? Are people pretty excited about you coming up and being a part of this all? Are you shaking hands and having great conversations out there? I wonder because I want to switch gears just a little bit because this is really the big one that I want to ask you. And I've spent probably the last few days really thinking about how we talk about a heavy subject. And I want to talk about the opioid crisis a little bit because, well, I think we both know that's a big one. And yesterday I went to Sam's up in Concord. I was just picking up some stuff and I saw those big ugly signs that say opiate lobbyist Cinde Warmington. And I thought to myself, one, that was a long time ago. And maybe a lot of people don't understand what they're trying to pin on you. In 24, would you consider this to be a big issue that was against your campaign? Do you think?
Yeah, sure. I think it's an issue that it's affected so many families across our state, and one I certainly take seriously. I told you that I was financially independent at age 17.
Yeah.
That was in large part due to addiction in my family and a bankruptcy that resulted because of that. And so addiction for me has been a formative part of my life. The struggle to try to help my family, my dad in particular. We still have family members today that are in our family that are struggling with addiction. We did not escape the opioid crisis.
Not many did. That was a hard time. I hate when people are putting those kind of names on people, those labels, as if you were solely responsible for the opiate crisis. In 24, I told you earlier that I didn't grow up here, so I wasn't here when that went down. So the name Cinde Warmington and opiate crisis doesn't really go together for me. What are they trying to say that you did?
Well, whatever they're trying to say, the reality of this is that this is an issue that's so fundamentally important to me that I went into healthcare to make sure that people have access to healthcare. And in 2001, when I, as an attorney, was assigned a case by a partner, that's what I was doing or trying to do, was to make sure people had access to the healthcare that they needed or that their doctors thought they should have. And what I did not know and could not have known at the time was that Purdue Pharma was engaged in this incredibly sophisticated nationwide criminal fraud that ultimately people would go to jail for. And they convinced many doctors that it was safe to prescribe OxyContin under circumstances that it was not.
Yeah.
My work lasted a period of 9 months. That was my total involvement with Purdue Pharma, ending in 2002. And if I had known what they were up to, I would most certainly have had nothing to do with it. It's just so contrary to who I am. It's so contrary to why I went into healthcare. It's so contrary to the fact that I have loved people, some of the people I love most in the world struggle with addiction.
I think a lot of people would understand that and relate to it. You know, I mean, even in my own family, we've had to deal with addiction. Even myself, being in the military, you know, during that time, if you went to the doctor in the military and you were, you know, I mean, I'm sure it was more than just I have a headache, but if you sprained your ankle, you know, I had back pain, stuff like that. My doctor just gave me as many Percocets as I want. I would joke with my family and friends, like, I can get any medication I want. I just got to ask. And they loaded me up with like Percocets. They loaded me, I think my last 3 or 4 years in the Air Force, I was on morphine just to kind of deal with some issues with discs in my neck and everything. But to think of like somebody providing counsel for 9 months and connecting that with those yellow signs, honestly, it sounds crazy. And I'm not trying to like sell anything here, but if that's what they're really trying to connect you with, then that's insane.
Yeah.
Is it just because people don't know the story? Is that what's the deal?
It's just politics.
Just politics?
I mean, it's, you know, it's politics, but it's attached to something that is so incredibly painful. Right?
Absolutely.
It's incredibly painful, you know, for my family. I certainly know the pain, the shame, the loss of addiction, including opioid addiction. And they are really exploiting people's pain.
I'm hoping that people will ignore those kind of things. I think that it's time that we've all suffered. Like, unless you are a part of the Sackler family, or, I mean, you didn't benefit millions of dollars off of this. You didn't like get a house paid for or something out of this, right? I mean, it was just, you did a job. It was connected to that. I mean, believe me, if I knew that the opiate crisis was going to be that bad, I would not have taken all the morphine and Percocets and everything else in between that they gave me. So that's an incredible weight to put on somebody. How do you move beyond that, though, this cycle? I mean, hopefully that's an easy thing, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, we have to make sure that people hear the truth, right? The absolute truth is, like, I know who I am. Yeah. I am somebody who cares deeply about the issues of mental health and substance use disorder. Once I did become an attorney, I spent my volunteer time, on the boards of mental health and substance use disorder providers, right? Both local in my community, the mental health centers, and it's just a passion for me. Yeah. I would see in the hospital someone who would come in looking for care. They are struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder problem, and they would very much be dismissed and discriminated against in our healthcare system. And that was infuriating to me, and something that I just always wanted to work against, work to resolve the stigma that's attached to it. And I know it. I know how it feels to have that stigma attached because, somebody that you love is struggling with addiction.
And this question, like, I know it probably feels like it's just for the episode, but it's really not. As somebody, like, I'm coming up on the 4th anniversary of losing my sister to heroin that had fentanyl in it. This has hit my family as hard as anybody else's, to recover from that. And so that's why I really wanted to ask you that question. And I was super excited that you were open to have this conversation, because it's hard. Not a lot of people want to talk about something so devastating across America. I can remember, watching TV shows, and I don't know, it was something similar to Cops, but with like paramedics. And they would show up on scene and people were brain dead because they had heroin and they had started on pills and everything else. And then in 24, and then this year, I'm seeing these stupid yellow signs. And at the end of the day, I want to see you become governor. And I say that because my current governor is going around taking photo ops at like beer breweries and like anything she can get her hands on. She is doing, from my point of view, so little in Concord to help the people, my family, my neighbors, and everybody else. And this is extremely personal to me because I have to live here. And if I'm going to have somebody tell me how I'm supposed to live my life, I'd like it to be with somebody that's going to be responsible and reasonable. And that's the biggest reason why I'm like grateful that you're willing to have this conversation with me right here doing it. It's hard. I just think of, I watched you take some pretty big questions from a group of people, and I was on the sidelines, and they were really powerful stories. And you sat there and you listened and you had a really good conversation with those people. That changed my mind right there. I think that's what I want to see in my governor. And I know that you have the experience on executive council. I know this is a big monologue, but I'm just saying, like, this is important that we clear the air.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of families, they're not going to want to step up to vote for an opiate lobbyist. They want to vote for somebody that really cares about them, that's going to help turn around the state. And to me, that's huge.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And that people do need someone who actually cares. And if you think about what are we going to do moving forward to address addiction, and who is in a better position to do that? I know, and in all of my work, I know that addiction and dealing with this issue requires prevention. It requires an investment in harm reduction. It requires an investment in treatment and in enforcement. And our current administration is focused on enforcement. I'm going to lock them up, and not focused on making sure that we're doing prevention, harm reduction, and treatment. All of those things can be hard and controversial. Those are hard conversations for some people.
Oh, yeah.
But those are conversations that I've been having and willing to have for decades now about how important it is that we bring medication-assisted treatment to our state. I was actually instrumental in that in the year 2000. And it was actually illegal in this state to use methadone to treat substance use disorder.
That's insane.
Yes, and we got that repealed, which paved the way for methadone and then ultimately for Suboxone. I'd been advocating for years to make sure we lifted the caps on Suboxone so that physicians could treat more patients. There was actually a limit on how many patients they could treat, and making sure that on the executive council too, that we're investing in things like peer counseling that are very effective, that we're making sure that Narcan is available in communities, that making sure that we are investing in getting Suboxone treatment. And it's one of the things about these cuts that Kelly has put in for Medicaid, that's going to impact that community, everyone who is, likely people that are on Suboxone. And it's going to take that care away from people who are depending on that to move forward in their lives. It's just tragic. It's tragic. And we need to be really focused. And as you say, you have to care.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with that, right? To have an incentive to care, to fix your community. I don't think it's easy to run for governor, and I'll say this just for anybody that's watching. Kelly Ayotte last year made $163,000. That's her salary as New Hampshire governor. If she made more than that, it was outside of the base salary. Yet this year in 2026, when it's probably one of the easiest years to run as a Democrat, at least, right? Because a lot of people are feeling the badness of what's happened. And yet nobody stepped up to run for governor. Like I think of a race like CD1 has 10 candidates somewhere around there. I mean, and going to Washington pays $175,000 a year. There's roughly a $12,000 difference, and you get to stay home. You get to stay in New Hampshire in this beautiful place. So that tells me that this job is very hard. And not a lot of people want it. Nobody wants to run for it. It's basically you and Kelly Ayotte. I want you to be the governor. And I say it again because I think you do care. I've seen you in multiple elections now. I've seen you do your stump speeches, but I've seen you shake hands. I didn't know you. And we were at the Blueberry Festival in 24, and you stepped up and I was talking with my wife and a couple people. You're like, let's do this. Let's have a photo. And I talked with you for a few minutes, and I had that great interaction. And I'm hoping more people will have that too. Now that we've covered kind of like the really dark topic, and probably the hardest one of anything I'm going to ask you for the rest of this, I promise, I want to talk about, I think, something that a lot of candidates at the lower level, I don't say lower level, that's not fair, but other people that are running, whether it's state house, state senate, they're going to hear a lot about my taxes are high. And I think they have every right to do so. As governor, how will you try to reduce our taxes?
Yes. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
So let's start with this entire scheme that they have been undertaking to do away with public schools. It's not an accident that people's property taxes have gone through the roof. It was part of the plan all along that they would drive up people's property taxes to the point that they would say they couldn't afford to pay for public schools anymore. They don't believe in public education. And that they're now saying the quiet part out loud as Kelly Ayotte's administration is in the Supreme Court, and they're arguing to overturn the Claremont decision, which is the decision that establishes a constitutional obligation to provide an adequate education to every kid in our state. So this wasn't accidental, and we need to reverse the things that they have been doing to take money away from our public schools. The most obvious is this voucher scheme, which is nothing but a pickpocket scheme, grabbing money from the pockets of working people and handing it to the richest people in our state. Right. And Kelly has doubled down on that, literally a double dipping proposal. First of all, she's the one that lifted the cap so that there was no more income caps. Any rich person can take the voucher.
And why wouldn't you? It's free money.
It's free money. She also put in the most recent bill, which is that you can take your voucher and then still send your kids to public school for up to half their classes, and the public schools can't charge for that anymore.
I was unaware of that one. Mm-hmm, that's awful.
It's terrible. And it just keeps on and on. Their efforts to undermine our public schools and drive up your property taxes. But I also think that they don't really care when they balance the budget on their side of the ledger, it's like on the state side, okay, we have a balanced budget, right?
Yeah.
But they don't seem to care that in the process they're downshifting costs to the local communities, right? So to me, that is my commitment as governor, is that every single bill that comes across my desk, I'm going to look for how is it transferring wealth around. Most policies transfer wealth in some way. And honestly, for 50 years now, we have been watching policy after policy after policy that transfers wealth up. This voucher scheme is one of the worst, most blatant examples of it I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But most policies have some effect. And we have to be looking at how wealth is being transferred. And is any of that cost getting downshifted to local communities? And that needs to be a non-starter. We have to be responsible for our own budget at the state level.
Oh, I fully agree. I feel like so many people are feeling that pinch when they go to the ballot and they see, when we're doing our town budget and we're all voting on it. Our school budget got voted against. Several towns also lost budget votes as well. So it's kind of been a struggle across New Hampshire. People are literally feeling it because you can't get out of property taxes. They'll put a lien on your house. They'll foreclose. They'll take your house. Try not paying your property taxes for a year or two and just see where that lands you. And so that's why it's so critical, because I need a roof over my head. My neighbor needs a roof over her head. But if we keep cranking down, there's going to be more foreclosures. There's going to be people that just are at their breaking point if they're not already.
Right. And I mean, I'm hearing from people just this week about how their property taxes so exceed their mortgages at this point. And elderly people in particular are really feeling this. They're on a fixed income, and they don't know how they're going to continue to pay these property taxes. And it is it's out of control. And we have a state administration that isn't focused on that at all. In fact, they're blaming the cities and towns. They're pointing the finger at the cities and towns and saying it's your fault for irresponsible budgeting. It's not. It is Kelly Ayotte's fault for not being responsible about making sure that when we budget or when we enact a policy, that if it's going to cost something, there's money to go with that. And not passing that unfunded mandate down on to the cities and towns. That's where we need to be focused.
Yeah. I mean, we're taking money out of our rainy day fund. Mm-hmm. I think revenues are down by like $400 million or something. It's a pretty large number. That's significant, because all that has to be made up from homeowners and property owners in general. And that hurts, especially when we need our kids to go to school and be properly funded.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a $400 million hole in the transportation plan. And
oh my God.
Right. And that was, it was vetoed by the governor for another reason. There was an out-of-state toll in there for out-of-staters.
Oh yeah, where they get paid, they pay more on their toll than we do. That is so wrong.
She vetoed it for that reason. Well, we pay more when we go to other states.
Oh, so it's a shame.
But she vetoed that transportation bill, which is so detrimental to so many things, to the jobs and construction jobs and the quality of our roads and our business, our tourism. I mean, talk about tourism, and I'm sure that the drivers who have to sit in the traffic between the Hooksett Toll and Concord on Friday afternoons would really appreciate that we would improve our roads, and yet those are the improvements that have been lost.
And I fully agree. We need roads. We've been driving on these roads for the last few months, after the winter, and they are atrocious. But it is nice to see that the state crews are out there and they're doing their job, and I appreciate them very much. But it's a lot. I mean, living in a harsh environment like we do, those roads get trashed really quick.
They do a great job. DOT's doing as much as they can possibly do with what they have.
Yeah, my hat's off to all of them. Mm-hmm, they have a really hard job. So keeping us all safe, very appreciative. Yeah. When it comes to property taxes, there's something else that gets connected to that today, and that's data centers, because data centers are doing a little bit more. they can improve property taxes. But they don't really pay taxes. And in fact, they're not even good employers. Like, there's very few people that live in or work at a data center. It's a little bit of my background. I've worked in servers and long haul transportation or communication. I was thinking about those roads, fiber optic and all that stuff. But data centers come in and they take all our water, they pollute, they drive up electric costs, and eventually they're just going to increase our property taxes because somebody's going to have to take care of that water. Somebody's going to have to like fix a lot of the stuff. We're going to get more energy. It's just as a cost of doing that business. And here in New Hampshire, we've said it already, how beautiful our state is. Where do you sit on data centers? And I know there's a difference between hyperscale data centers that focus on AI and data centers that hold our Gmail account. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the record here, having called for a moratorium, a statewide moratorium to take a pause here and evaluate whether we want these in our state, and if so, under what conditions. Certainly the issues around skyrocketing electric costs, which we've seen in other locations, is critical. We need to make sure we address that. We have to look at the consumption of water and what it will do to the surrounding communities. Noise pollution is an important part of it. Yes, They put off an enormous amount of noise in the local area, disruptive to both humans and wildlife. These mega data centers require fire suppression systems that use the kind of firefighting foam that is laden with PFAS. So there's, the risk of contamination there. There's so many risks to be evaluated. And I think that we need a moratorium. We need to make sure if they do come here that these companies are paying their fair share of the cost. We need to make sure that the local communities have the ability to weigh in here and have their concerns heard and addressed. And so I will say this, this governor signed a bill really rolling out the red carpet for these data centers. They can now have their own off-grid power generation, which at this point would likely mean diesel generators with smokestacks and air contamination.
I think of the one down in Louisiana, Alabama, wherever Elon has his, and he's got something to the tune of like 70 jet turbines just cranked 24/7. I couldn't imagine that in my backyard, in my town, hearing a hum 3 miles away.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there were two bills in the legislature, one that would put guardrails around local control and all of the things that we've been talking about, and one that would have put a moratorium on. This governor provided no leadership on this, and those died in the legislature. So we need real leadership on this issue.
I know people get scared over regulation, but regulation exists to protect us. To protect our beautiful animals in our woods. I love seeing the deer come through my yard, turkeys and everything else. To think of, like, it's already hard enough that they're cutting down so many trees, in my area at least, but to think that they would clear football fields of forest to put some box with computers in there. I hope we get rid of it all. Honestly, I want cheaper hard drives. I want cheaper RAM. I want to go back to the way I will never go back, but it would be nice. It'd be nice to keep my environment clean. I'd like my air to be clean. I'd like my noise pollution to be down. We have all that in New Hampshire. It's gorgeous.
Yes.
I want to keep that.
Me too. We absolutely need to stand our ground on this issue and make sure that, these big companies aren't coming in here and buying their way into our state.
I'm so afraid of the lobbyists and everything else, the way they control states. I don't know if it's the same here in New Hampshire, but, did you have to deal with that as an executive council member, lobbyists and stuff like that?
Sure. I mean, I will tell you at the state level, a lot of times lobbyists are just informing legislators. But you have to make your own decisions. And make sure that you're not being affected by powers to be that shouldn't be affecting your decision making.
Yeah,
and that's it's a really important part of being a responsible executive counselor. It's part of being a responsible governor.
We are just in the most corrupt government ever, not just New Hampshire, but at the federal level. So I think a lot of people are just feeling that, like, how do we get out of this? How do we get somebody that's really going to take us? But we're seeing those successes in places like New York City right now, Troy Jackson across, people are excited for that change. They want to get corruption out of our politics. I don't know if it's that much in New Hampshire. Because our state is so small, there's not a lot of outlets where you can see it so easy.
Well, I would say this, that the revolving door is a huge part of the problem. People that are in elected office go out of elected office, go into the private sector, cash in based on the influence that they have and the relationships that they've built while they're in office, and cash in and make a lot of money, and then maybe back into elected office, back out again, back into jobs in the government. And this is a real issue in our state. And our current governor did just that. Went and left office and sat on the board of Blackstone, the predatory landlord around the country that buys up properties, jacks up the cost, and was making over $150,000 a year plus stock. Last report I saw was over $2 million in Blackstone stock. And this is the kind of thing that contaminates our politics, and we need to be making sure we're paying attention to that.
Very much so. I am completely against people taking advantage of the government like that. I mean, it's one thing to have a government job. There's nothing wrong with that. But to be using it to personally profit and probably take back kickbacks and certain positions on boards and stuff like that, that doesn't give me a lot of like warm fuzzies, if you will. Like I need somebody that's going to be like really focused on the people and taking, and I think a lot of people feel that way. What are people screaming?
And I just want to clarify that.
Please.
I didn't accuse anybody of taking kickbacks or anything like that.
No. I'm sorry. That was me.
System that
was me.
It is broken.
But I know that I think a lot of people understand that, and I know that you're not pointing fingers here. I can't prove if anybody in particular is taking it. That's not what I do. But I know that it happens. I mean, we see it at the federal level where we're just, Don Jr. and Eric taking contracts everywhere. If it happens there, then more than likely it happens at the state level, just with names that we probably aren't aware of. That's all, right? I mean, I think, again, I have no idea, but I think we all feel that it's happening. And it's troubling. I think we have time for one more.
Oh.
Is there something in particular that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we've talked about energy, childcare. We haven't talked about childcare.
I think that would be a great one.
Huge.
Yeah.
Basically, people don't go to work if they don't have a safe place for their children to be cared for.
Yeah.
It's just a reality. And we need to make sure that we are investing in our kids and making sure they have a safe place and a place where they can grow and learn. It's so important that we invest in childcare. And that would mean, for me, funding the workforce grants.
Yeah.
It would mean making sure that we are investing in early childhood education, making more companies eligible or home care providers eligible for that. When I was on the executive council, I spotted a program in Keene. It was very innovative, where they were taking moms or dads, whatever, who were at home raising their own children and interested in taking more kids in. So this would be home-based childcare, right? What they did was put up a program that was 8 weeks of how to run a business, 8 weeks of child development In there, they included how to comply with state regulations, and there was some money to help make some physical changes to the homes to comply with the state regulations. They opened up like 60 slots in a very short order of childcare slots. And they brought some structure around home care providers, which can be a very isolating world.
Absolutely.
But, brought some structure where they can come together and share information and benefit from that mutually. And it's a program that I know we were piloting around the state, and that we should do more of. We definitely should invest in early childhood education. We're one of only 5 states in the whole country that does not right now, and our kids need a good head start on their future like everybody else's kids. And we're not doing that. It would be a big relief to parents if we were investing in pre-K. That would be a year or more of childcare that they won't have to pay for, right?
Yeah.
And public pre-K, and we need to be moving quickly in that direction. So it's an critically important topic for the things that we've been talking about, young people, but also the businesses and the business environment in our state. And I look forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting to work.
We need it.
We need it.
My town alone, every year, the ELC or ECLC, I think it is, they roll out the slots, and within minutes they're gone.
Yeah.
And then there's so many young parents that say, oh my God, what do I do? In an environment where childcare is so important, not just for parents to be able to go to work, but for all sorts of things that happen. Education in our community provides children that want to contribute back to the community. An educated workforce is a really good workforce. That's not to bash anybody that chooses not to go down that road. I think trades are just as powerful as college. Mm-hmm. I think together they're epic. You can do so much more as an educated tradesman or tradeswoman. But childcare is where it all starts. Mm-hmm. And it is something that blows my mind that a state wouldn't say, let's get this done. I know the cost is huge. A lot of parents.
A lot of it is low-hanging fruit, really.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this something that can be done in the first year?
Yes.
Or, yeah?
Yes. Workforce grants should have been funded and not, zeroed out in the budget. We should be, I agree that moving towards public pre-K is going to be a process, but it's a process we need to get started now.
Right. The best time to start is today.
Yes.
The other best time was yesterday,
yes.
But you got to get it done. And so I agree with that. I want those young parents to be here. I want to go to Market Basket and see those young kids, helping with the cart and stuff like that. As an older person, it touches me a little bit when you say we're an old state, because I'm about to be 50. Obviously, I'm going to grow old here if I stay, and I want to. But I want those younger families to stay. I need to know that those folks, those kids, have an opportunity to make it in a state. I don't want them to go to any other state. For what? This could be the most amazing state if we put it together.
Yeah.
We've just been voting wrong for the last really century, it feels like, but specifically in the last 10 years.
The last 10 years in particular, yes. And it is an amazing state. And we do want our young people to stay here and make this a place where everybody can grow and thrive and raise their families. And I do want to just say one more thing about higher education.
Yes.
We are dead last in funding higher education. And it's, to the point that it is less expensive for our kids to go out of state and pay out of state tuition somewhere else than it is to stay here. And they graduate with these record high amounts of student debt. We're chasing our young people out of the state, and then we don't get them back. This is crazy. This is crazy.
The other part of that confuses me is, for most states, their university system is their crown jewel, right? When somebody talks about UNH or really any of our schools, that should be a point of pride.
Yes.
And with those budget cuts, it feels like we don't want that. And that's troubling. That is very troubling. I have 2 Wildcats in my family with 2 more on the way. So we're very, proud UNH alumni family. I want other people in the state to have that opportunity. Every kid should. I know that the first 2 years of community college for high school graduates in New Hampshire, they go to community college, and essentially between grants, most of their tuition is paid for in the first 2 years. But man, to get even more wildcats through that door, the graduation door, to encourage people to come to New Hampshire, it does so much more than just educate our kids. It's really our crown jewel.
Yes.
And so I want somebody that cares deeply about that. What's your favorite part of the state as a person? Is it the hiking? Is it? I want to end knowing just a little bit more about you.
I love the hiking.
Yeah?
I love to be in the woods. It doesn't have to be a 4,000 footer for me, right? It doesn't. I just want to.
Won't be catching up on Mount Washington.
Right. The mid-sized mountains like Mount Major and Kearsarge, or hiking Zealand Falls, or, even Artist Bluff for a quick hike, or, I just love to be outside. But I have to say, I am mesmerized by our lakes.
Our lakes are incredible. I didn't realize how much water New Hampshire had until I started driving around this state.
So beautiful.
Incredible.
Yes.
And you spend a lot of time. Wait, do you get to spend time at Lake Winnie?
I do.
Yeah?
I do get to spend. I raised my family in Guilford, and I still spend time up there. And to watch a sunset on Lake Winnipesaukee
is an incredible feeling.
There's no place more beautiful. Right?
Oh,
no place more beautiful.
That is, I can't wait to get back up there again. Every time I go up there, it feels good. I love going up to Mount Major as well.
Yeah.
As you can see Lake Winnie from up there. Oh my goodness, it's so good.
Yeah, and I'm introducing all the grandchildren. I have 2 children. I have 4 grandchildren.
Oh my goodness.
And I am very fortunate that they come up on the weekends quite a lot in the summer. And
so important.
Getting introduced to the beauty of our state.
Yeah, I want them to stay here in New Hampshire too. Just like my kids. So before we finish, I always give everybody the last word before we wrap up, and I want you to say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah,
thank
my
you
pleasure.
for taking this time and asking the tough questions that need to be asked. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. Thank you for caring as much as you care about our state, and for everything you're doing here.
Well, thank you so much for those compliments, and thank you very much for doing this.
My pleasure.
All right.